Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, part of the Weirding Way Media Network.
80s TV ladies, so sexy and so pretty. 80s TV ladies, stepping out into the city. 80s TV ladies, often treated kind of working hard for the money in a man's world. 80s TV ladies.
Here are your hosts, Sharon Johnson and Susan Lambert Haddam.
Thank you, Melissa. I am Susan.
And I'm Sharon. We are excited to wrap up our look at It's a Living, the 1980s workplace comedy centered on a group of waitresses working at Above the Top, the fancy restaurant at the top of the Bonaventure Hotel in beautiful downtown Los Angeles.
Okay, well, Sharon, it is beautiful, but I'm going to wrap this up with a caveat. We are definitely hoping to talk with some more stars and creators from this show, so we will be circling back if we get some special guests. So shout out to, Ann Jillian, Gail Edwards, Barry Longfellow, Cheryl Lee Ralph, whoever.
That would be great. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
It's a Living, also known as Making a Living for a Season, was created by Stu Silver, Jenna McMahon, and Dick Clare, and it was produced by Whit Thomas Productions.
It ran on ABC from October 30th, 1980, the very beginning of the 80s, to June 1982. It was canceled after season 2, but then did successful enough in reruns to be brought back as a syndicated show. That syndicated part ran from September 28th, 1985 to April 8th, 1989. This show almost ran throughout the 80s, the whole thing. Anyway, between the broadcast and syndication run, 120 episodes were produced over those 6 seasons.
It's a Living touted itself as the first all-female situation work comedy.
Over the course of the 6 seasons, the show starred Ann Jillian, Susan Sullivan, Barry Youngfellow, Gail Edwards, Marion Mercer, Wendy Shaw,
Bert Ramson, Paul Kreppel, Louise Lasser, Earl Bowen, Crystal Bernard, Richard Stahl, and Cheryl Lee Ralph.
That's a lot of powerhouse actors.
Indeed.
Our last episode, we got to speak with the hilarious and warm Paul Kreppel, who starred in all 6 seasons as the raucous, ridiculous, smarmy piano player, Sonny Man.
It was such a fun interview. Definitely go back and check it out if you haven't already. We got to meet him in person after a performance of Into the Woods at the Amundsen Theater here in Los Angeles.
All right, now, Sharon, I think the number one thing to remember about this show is that life's not the French Riviera. I mean, believe me, life's not a charity ball, right?
Yeah, it isn't all a great big bed of roses. It's not like showbiz. But the main thing, I suppose, is
we're not the people you envy. Believe me, we know we're doing okay, right?
Mostly okay. We may be less than wealthy, but better yet, we're young and healthy.
A little bit young.
And anyone who's young and healthy knows that that's the way the traffic flows.
We've no misgivings.
It's a living.
All right, that was our clever and funny way to give you all the lyrics to the It's a Living theme song. It is, Sharon, one of the oddest theme songs from the 80s, and that's saying a lot. But I think it kind of reflects the oddity of this show, which is both bouncy and fun, and then sometimes weirdly serious.
The song was written by George Tipton and Leslie Bricusse. Leslie Bricusse is a British composer and lyricist who wrote music and lyrics for a bunch of stuff like Dr. Dolittle, Scrooge, Victor Victoria, and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Some of his most famous songs include Goldfinger, You Only Live Twice, Talk to the Animals, Candyman, and Pure Imagination.
Come with me.
And we'll see.
You'll see. It's a land of pure imagination.
Take a look and we'll be. Oh, I forget. I don't know.
In your imagination.
If you truly wish it. We're just going to sing lyrics.
If you
so you can say lyrics.
Paradise. Take a look around.
Simply look around and view it. Wanna change the world.
Let's do it. Anything
you want. There's nothing to it.
Doom, ding, doom.
That's an amazing song. But I got to tell you, Goldfinger.
That's my favorite. Who sings that? Isn't it?
It's
That's
Eartha
Shirley
Kitt.
Bassey.
Oh, Shirley Bassey.
Yeah.
Okay.
As-
What does Eartha Kitt sing?
I don't think
Eartha
she
Kitt?
sang any of the James
She
Bond
sang
songs. But I think Shirley Bassey also sang You Only Live Twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Goldfinger's so perfect.
You only live twice, or so it seems.
Oh, nice.
One life for yourself and one for your dreams. You drift through the years and life seems tame. Till one dream appears and love is its name. I started way too low on this. For love is the danger that beckons you on. But something, the stranger is gone. That's all I got.
That's amazing. Okay, we're just going to be singing today's episode. Sharon, you're going to take it away.
It's podcast opera day.
Oh my gosh. But look what's coming up.
Okay, the song's musical composer was George Tipton, who did themes for Soap, Benson, Empty Nest, The Courtship of Eddie's Father, The Love Boat, and The Golden Girls, and like so many more movies, TV film scores. Also worked with a lot of songwriters as well.
The 80s still was a time when theme songs for TV shows was a thing.
I miss it. We
I
miss
do
it.
too.
Why can't streaming bring that back if streaming wanted to be nice about everything?
They could, but so far they haven't. But
No.
I miss TV theme songs.
I don't
Let me tell
remember.
The story of this show. That's how
What
things
was that?
went.
I don't remember the courtship of Ed. I mean, I loved the show with Bill Bixby, right? The courtship
Yeah.
of Eddie's father.
I believe it was instrumental, but maybe not. Yeah.
Oh, right. He was the musical composer.
Let's see. Here we go.
Welcome aboard. It's the
Exciting
Yeah, I mean the one for Soap was also just music.
Let's see. I'm going to play it.
Let me tell you about
Oh, no.
You were right.
best friend. She's a warm-hearted person who loves me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a one-boy cuddly toy, my up, my down, my pride and joy. People, let me tell you about him. He's so much fun. Whether we're walking man to man or whether we're walking sun to sun, 'cause he's my best friend. Yeah, he's my best friend. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Is that like Paul Williams?
Okay. Is it just going to be a Courtship of Eddie's Father podcast today?
I've forgotten all about that one. Gosh.
That song always made me very, very happy. though.
Yeah.
God, we were littles.
Yeah.
when that show was on. Yeah.
But there was syndication. There watched a lot of stuff in syndication.
That's
too.
true.
Was it Barry Williams, the blonde
singer?
guy who
Oh,
was also did acting on like The Love Boat? He was kind of
When you say Barry Williams, all I think about
Paul
is
Williams.
Yes, Paul Williams. When you
I
said
don't know if
Barry,
that was Paul Williams.
he was on Brady Bunch. He was,
Oh,
he
right.
was Greg.
He was Greg. Paul Williams.
Yes.
the theme song was written with Tipton, but the lyrics were Harry Nilsson.
Oh.
And I think he
Oh.
performed it.
Yeah.
And he wrote, no, he didn't write, but he performed the version for Midnight Cowboy that became so popular. The theme song. of
Everybody's
Midnight Cowboy.
Talking.
Everybody's talking.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was a good one.
And that was a song written by somebody else. I want to say Fred somebody. But he and George Tipton made it super famous because of the arrangement and his performance
For the movie.
for the movie Midnight Cowboy.
I've never seen that movie.
I saw it in film school. It's interesting. It's
Ratso
of the
Rizzo,
70s.
right? Is
Yeah,
that the-
yeah. I mean, the performances are
Ratso Rizzo.
freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, but we digress. Meanwhile, back at It's a Living, back at the top of the Bonaventure.
So In this episode, we're going to cover a little bit more about some special episodes, the stars, and 5 things you need to know about It's a Living.
And apparently a lot of songs. One of my favorite things about this show, and I had forgotten about it, right? We talked about that, is just how 80s it is. The clothes are pretty good 80s, not like outrageous 80s, but really strong 80s, I think. I love there's a payphone in the locker room / employee lounge, and they talked about 80s stuff in the show. They mentioned concerts and TV shows sort of throughout episodes, but that was really like sort of a surprise because many shows don't do that kind of mentioning of like stuff, right? They try to sort of be a little more timeless. Like Taxi wasn't talking a lot about, the movies of the day or the TV shows of the day, but this show would.
I think maybe because they did spend a lot of time in the kitchen and the employee lounge, whatever you want to call it, where they kind of hung out talking about what their plans were after work, what they were doing on the weekends, as people often do at work, and they obviously couldn't talk about that much when they're out with the guests, but when they were by themselves and that's what they talked about, which is what most people talk about when they're at work. What are your plans? What's coming up?
What are you doing this weekend?
Yeah, exactly. As far as favorite episodes, I think probably the one that really does stand out for me is the one where Nancy gets fired. Now, I say this as someone who did not watch this show when it originally aired, and I don't remember catching it often, if at all, during its syndication run. So most of my knowledge, I knew of it, but I didn't really know the show like I have some of the other shows we have talked about and will talk about because I watched those. But the one where Nancy got fired really kind of stuck out for me, I think, because it showed that even back then they were already starting, because it was in the first season, they were already starting to talk about things that mattered because she was fired because of her age, her lofty age of mid-40s, for goodness sake.
I know. So this is called You're Not Old, You're Fired. It's from season 1, episode 13. And Nancy is fired, and the girls convince her to file an age discrimination suit.
And they also work together to try to help her get her job back.
And that's the great thing in some ways about this. Nancy is both the antagonist of the show and yet one of the girls. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is sort of one of those episodes that shows you that, right? That reveals that as much as she's kind of writing them and in charge of them and kind of snarky to them, when push comes to shove, they'll have her back.
Exactly.
And that continues throughout the show. She is often in the same episode. Nancy will be played by Marion Mercer, who will be matronly and loving and sort of motherly to the girls. And then, in the next scene, be, yelling at them and telling them,
get back to work.
Get back to work. So she doesn't turn into like the, from Taxi. She's
Louis.
not Louis. She's not
Correct.
Louis.
Correct.
She's actually a real person in the show. And amazingly, I think season 1 set the tone for the show that pretty much sustained, even when there's a like almost 3-year break in the show. When they come back with the same cast that they left to season 2 with, and a very similar tone. And that's really odd, particularly when you look at, like, say, a show like 9 to 5, where the first 2 seasons are vastly different tone from the final seasons of that show. And so that's one of the things I loved, is that it's being funny, and looking back at it, that I'm not sure I appreciated as much, having, again, sort of sparsely seen it. It sort of keeps the funny coming, and yet it really is taking on some serious episodes. Like in season 1, episode 9, Making the Grade, Jan goes on a date with a professor. She's taking classes, and he wants to sleep with her, or, threatens to fail her. And you're like, okay, wow. All right. We're just going right in with these very serious things. There's they talk about guns, right? In more than one episode of this show. So what else did you like?
Well, I liked that the women got along. Too often when there's a group of women in a show, they tend to get pitted against each other. But these were in all its iterations, a group of women that were all very different. Some had kids, some were single. There was an age disparity amongst them, but they really tended to just get along, which I thought was really great, and be supportive of each other. I've really found that to be something that stood out to me as well.
Yeah, and I thought the ensemble nature of the show kind of worked really well. The only thing that sort of would derail it for me is sometimes there's a lot of Paul Kreppel. And we adore Paul Kreppel, but there's a lot of Sonny shows, right? Like that are sort of centered around him, and I'm like, that's great, but you got 4 to 5 other ladies here. We need more of them. But I feel like in the season 1, and we talked about this, I think, with Jane Espenson and Drew Greenberg, that there really is one too many women in that room. I think they have 5 waitresses in that first season.
Mm-hmm.
For a really small restaurant.
Well, you can imagine there's another side.
Another room. And that I'm so glad they moved the salad station out of the break room.
Yes. and
That drove me crazy. I couldn't get over it. I'm like, stop gawking around the salad station.
you really you are thinking okay, the food grading, they're going to need a little screen for that salad station.
It's called a sneeze plate for a good reason.
But I do appreciate that it gave a lot of depth to when they moved it into the kitchen and it's circular. There's a lot of depth in that shot for a sitcom, right? Like when they're in there they often fought over the salad station. And with
they
their
just
tongs.
needed the sneeze guard. It would have been great. But or some kind of venting fan over the grill.
Okay, you're going to be safety inspecting the sitcom.
Were there sneeze guards over? Were there salad bars with sneeze guards in the early 80s? Were people concerned about that sort of thing?
Okay,
yet?
listeners, do we have sneeze bars? Sneeze bars? Were there sneeze bars?
Guards.
Sneeze
That's a good
guards.
question. I'm trying. I was.
When did that come
definitely-
in? Do you remember there was what was the crazy restaurant that had it was a bit of a chain that had the big, long salad bar. There's Soup Plantation, but before that, there was a big
salad bar place.
crazy salad bar. And I remember that was
wide
the
open.
dream when you got to go there as a kid, because we didn't get to go out that much.
Yeah.
We didn't either. But I don't remember. I remember there being a change vaguely have this thing in my head that says there was a change at some point that the sneeze guards came along.
Right.
So maybe in the 80s it wasn't.
It wasn't, right.
Yeah, but
So
still.
I'm looking back with my modern serving
Yeah, but still.
lens.
It wasn't Sizzler, but I do remember Sizzler had a pretty good salad bar.
Oh, are you thinking about the Hometown Cafe?
No.
Ponderosa?
Ponderosa is a good one. That was a good place. God. No, it wasn't.
We'll have to come back for
And
it.
then when did Soup Plantation come?
Oh, that would have been
90s.
I think so.
Yeah, I was here
Yeah.
in LA when that thing opened up.
That's my feeling as well.
Yeah.
I remember the Sizzler.
Sizzlers are always great.
They had really good cheese bread. During one of my vegetarian phases, I would go there, get the cheese bread. It was very cheap. And the salad bar, which was pretty cheap too, because what they were really trying to sell you is steak.
Yeah.
And I'd have a whole meal with cheese bread and a salad bar.
I'm
Sizzler
trying to think
salad bar.
all you can eat salad bar may have started at Pizza Hut.
Oh.
Pizza Hut's a really old chain, and it was a big thing. Like when it first opened up, I can remember as a family dinner going out to the Pizza Hut to sit down and eat there, not just delivery. But I think I remember the same thing with the Burger King. I remember the first Burger King, and that was a
That
big
had
thing.
a salad bar?
No, just the first Burger King. Going out to the first Burger King, it was like a big event.
That was good times. Okay. Well, we have once again digressed into food. Well, appropriate to this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a restaurant.
They don't do a lot of food episodes. There's early on, there's one about the fish is bad. The fish has gone bad. But I think they avoided a lot of food, the obvious food stories. But all right, so some of my other favorites was in deeper seasons. I really liked season 4, episode 1 is called The Roof Show. And everyone's trying to leave early, but the staff gets, basically, Sonny gets stuck up on the roof, and then everybody goes to look for him. And everybody, like 4 of them end up stuck up on the roof. And it's absolutely charming. And I really like Cheryl Lee Ralph in this. She plays Ginger, and she's trying to get out to meet a guy that she's talking to the payphone at the start of the show. And she's like, I know I'm not coming. I can't believe I'm never talking to you again. And then by the end of the phone call, she's like, okay, I'll come meet you at the 1 a.m. in the morning and at the airport. And then Gail comes in, Gail Edwards comes in and is like, wait, who are you meeting? What are you doing? She's like, I talked to no one. I'm going nowhere. And I have to get out of here early to do it. I thought that was funny.
That is cute.
And then so they were all trying to get out, but they all end up stuck on the top
That
of the
would be a bummer.
Yeah. And I'm like, and again, we're talking about food safety. We should be talking about roof safety. You should be able to open the door to the top of the roof from the outside. But you know what? It's a sitcom. You buy it. There's one of the shows where they are talking about like sort of referencing modern things. And this is more in the theme of the episode is season 5, episode 2. They have a episode entitled Her Back to the Future. And now I'm blanking on who has this dream. I think it's Nancy. Nancy is dreaming about what's going to happen 10 years from now, and it's chaos. But Cheryl Lee Ralph gets to perform in that episode, and I love that they had a lot of musical numbers scattered throughout the show. As soon as they know, like, okay, we've got Paul Creppold. I think Gail Edwards is a big, awesome singer, and of course Cheryl Lee Ralph. Dream Girls. Thank you very much. So I liked those episodes, and I liked the second to last episode of the entire show, which in some ways I kind of was like, maybe that's the last episode of the show. I don't know. Or like for me emotionally is called A Very Special It's a Living. And this is one of the things I loved about it. It was sort of making fun of tropes, even as it was doing them. But it also was referencing Beauty and the Beast, a real 1980s show, which we might have to cover, starring Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. And at the start of the show, Amy, Crystal Bernard's character, is reading through the television listings, and whatever she's reading is a cross between a newspaper and the TV guide. And she's trying to decide what's worth recording on her VCR. And she literally talks about that. She's like, oh, I'm trying to figure out what to record. And then she reads these descriptions of Beauty and the Beast, and they're making fun of the concept of Beauty and the Beast. And they do it twice. They do it at the top of the show and the end of the show. But the story, they pack a lot of crazy story into the 30 minutes. The story is that Jan is pregnant, goes into premature labor. She ends up in the operating room with preeclampsia. They do an emergency C-section, and she dies on the table. Then gets a visit from Mr. D, the angel of death, who's played by Danny Thomas. She takes him back to the restaurant to show how much her friends love her. And then basically talks her way out of dying. And so then at the end, we cut to 3 months after that's happened, and she brings the baby over to show them the baby, showing that she took 3 months off for maternity leave and still has a job.
That's astonishing.
Which was not happening in 1980.
Well, you would especially think not so in the restaurant and the food service industry.
No, they held her job for her for 3 months. But I do love that they bring a very cute baby back into the show, and everybody gets to ooh and ah around the baby. And then Howard gives the baby a giant soup bone to hold. And the baby totally grabs it and holds onto it for the rest of the scene. That, to me, you could just then end the show. But there you go. Anyway, so those were my favorite episodes. There's a lot. I love the music in this show. I love that they literally just do big musical numbers all the time in this show. And so that was super fun. So do we want to talk about the numbers?
Let's do it.
All right. So, we like to look at the numbers of female representation behind the scenes on these shows. And again, we should be looking at everybody, but we look at directors and writers. Out of the 16 directors listed on IMDb, by the way, 16 directors for 120 episodes. So they used their directors a lot. There seemed to be 2 female directors, 12.5%. Actually, not bad for the 80s.
Yeah.
The 2 directors are Christine Ballard, who also worked on Alice, the original Night Court, and Charles in Charge, among many other television shows, and Nima Barnett, who is the first African-American woman to direct a network sitcom that was in 1986 on What's Happening Now. And let's just sit with that, Sharon. The first African-American woman directed a sitcom in 1986, less than 40 years ago. Apparently not before that, according to Wikipedia.
Doesn't surprise me, but yeah.
Well,
But it took that long.
Yeah, Melissa, we're going to try to get Nima. I want to get Miss Barnett on the show if we can find her. She is still directing today. She has directed television, movies, and plays. She has done 53 television shows and TV movies, including Hooperman, China Beach, Cosby Show, Seventh Heaven, Gilmore Girls, The Equalizer, All Rise, Reasonable Doubt. I got to tell you, I don't know why we don't know more about Nima Barnett.
Yeah, she's definitely somebody that should be more well-known, I would think, at this point, after the amazing career that she's had.
But I am going to credit that show for, you kind of had to actively seek out female directors.
Yeah.
I think.
And hopefully if we're able to get her on the show, we can find out how she ended up working on this one.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
All right.
So, but let's look at writers next. And out of the 39 listed writers, 13 are women. That's 33%. And that's pretty great especially for the 80s.
Yeah.
And the female writers on the show were Shelley Zellman with her partner Wally Dalton, Barbara Benedek, Gloria Banta, Deborah Leshen, Alicia Marie Schutt, and Paula A. Roth.
So those numbers are pretty good.
Those are very good.
I can't exactly remember what we said about Cagney Lacey, but Cagney Lacey seems a little bit better from what I remember.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But nobody else comes close.
Yeah.
Like the other shows that we've looked at so far have been sparser than that for women. So
absolutely.
I'm going
And even today.
And even today.
I mean,
yeah.
And it would be interesting to know how that compares maybe with other comedies as we look at some of the other comedies we're going to talk about. Do their numbers match up? Are these numbers high? Are these numbers low?
Yeah.
In comparison, that'll be very interesting to see.
All right. So did you have any favorite cast members?
Well,
favorite characters?
It's really hard to pick, but I will. I love Marion Mercer, mainly because I just love her in general. And I loved Susan Sullivan because I watched her on Another World before she went to primetime, and have watched her in other. She's long been an actress that I've enjoyed watching. I think she was on Falcon Crest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And yeah, so I don't want to guess beyond that. And of course, Cheryl Lee Ralph was great on this show as well.
Yeah, I think I caught it mostly with Cheryl Lee Ralph in terms of shows that I saw at the time, because I remember her being in the show and I just assumed she was there from the beginning, but she was not. And I just love Susan Sullivan. I really could watch her do a lot. And she left the show, I believe, to go take one of the starring roles in Falcon Crest, which she then was on for 9 years. So that was great. But I felt that Susan Sullivan's character, which was kind of the mom of the Lois, was a great character to have. And yet I think they may have felt it clashed a little bit with Marion Mercer's character, Nancy, because she sort of became more motherly and then let the waitresses, kind of less motherly. Although they became mothers, some of them were mothers, some of them became mothers over the course of the show. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but just so strong. Like, and of course I love Ann Gillian. I remember Ann Gillian from the show as well. So I had to have watched some of those episodes too, as being brassy. I think I may have watched Ann Gillian star as Mae West in a TV movie about Mae West. And I think that may have been my introduction to her. And that would have been, I think, before It's a Living.
It's funny. I have been trying to remember what my introduction to Anne Gillian was, because I have this feeling that I was familiar with her before this show, but for the life of me can't remember specifically from where. Even looking over her credits, I can't say, oh, okay, I remember it was this. It's like, I'm really not sure. And of course, back then, things came and went, and it's we were lucky if you had a chance to go back and rewatch something in a rerun or something. But it just never quite, I never quite could figure that out.
Yeah. And I do think that season 2 starred Louise Lasser just for that season. And Louise Lasser, of course, most famously being Mary Hartman from Mary Hartman, but an amazing actress. Very interesting to watch in this show, in a different show.
Yeah, I think she, for all of her talents, I'm not sure she was the right actress to be on this show in this ensemble, which may have something to do with why she was only on for that one season. Maybe they figured that just wasn't quite the right.
She was sort of doing a different thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I could totally just watch her. I liked her more as that character than I really liked her in Mary Hartman, because I always had trouble getting into that particular character when I would watch. I didn't catch it when it was running, but in looking back at it. But I mean, such interesting choices, very quirky, very unusual choices, but a different rhythm altogether from the rest of this show.
Yeah.
Like, not a sitcom rhythm at all.
Yeah, and I'm not sure this show lended itself to quirky.
Yeah.
Some shows don't. It just has, it just is. But yeah.
And of course, Crystal Bernard, who played Amy, would go on to be like the star of Wings, right? The female star of Wings. And what is amazing, they had cast, she's also a singer, right? So they just had singers everywhere, right and left and up and down.
And on both this show and on Wings, they used her Texas roots. They used her real, for lack of a better word, real voice, if you will, and just used it as part of her character, which I thought, well, that's great. I mean, she's very talented. She's very good on the show. She was very good on Wings. And I really kind of liked that they just said, hey, we'll just use this. Great.
Yeah, And Wings starring, of course, Time Daly's little brother.
That's right.
That's how I always think of him now.
Doesn't Louise Lasser have no degree of separation from our very favorite Martha Smith? Weren't they both in Animal House? Wasn't Louise Lasser in Animal House? Didn't she play one of the sorority sisters of
Louise Lasser?
Fern Lebowitz?
Okay,
Where'd they go?
All right, now hold on.
It just popped into
You're
my head. It
taking
could
us
have
in a
been
deep-
somebody else.
Louise Lasser in Animal House. Okay, we're gonna have to see. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think you're thinking of somebody else.
Looked like Louise Lasser.
She was, with Woody Allen, did a ton of Woody Allen early. So a lot of her style feels very that New York style.
Yeah.
But she was not in Animal House.
Okay.
That would be a very different Animal House.
Well, she would have been really young too, so.
I know, but yeah. But who, so I know what role you're talking about.
When they all go out on dates
Yeah.
after Fern dies, they read the obituary to go try and meet the girls from Vassar or something. It's an all-girls school.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've seen Animal House, but honestly, I don't remember a whole lot of it. There's certain things I remember about it, but beyond that.
Admittedly, I've seen it a lot of times.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I should rewatch it, but I'm a little bit afraid. Anyway, Gail Edwards, I love because she's so very watchable. Mm-hmm. Also gets to sing. She plays Dot, right? So she sings a lot with Paul Kreppel, I think, in a couple of episodes in this. But she of course blossomed, Full House. I think she came back for Fuller House.
Well, let's take a look.
But amazing because, again, not easy to carry. She's sort of, season 1, they were doing a lot of, here's the dumb one, and here's the mother, and here's the this. They were doing a lot of the 4-character sitcom trope, and they lightened up on that. She's playing sort of an actress who's a little bit dumb, but it's not the point of her character by season 3. And I appreciated a lot. And I love that the girls would fight over things, but it would be about real things. I'm thinking of the episode where Cheryl Lee Ralph and Amy are roommates. They're living together, and Ginger finds out that she has a gun in the house that she keeps under her pillow. And it becomes sort of about gun storage safety. And you're like, okay, yeah, still having that conversation. But that's the fight, is I'm going to move out, right? Which I would, I told a boyfriend he had to get his gun out of this.
Yeah, I'm sure those are discussions that happen in a lot of relationships over the years. Roommates, significant others, etc.
Yeah, so that's how weird this show was. It was a comedy that then did an episode about gun storage and who feels safe with a gun or not. And another episode where they take self-defense lessons because there's been attacks in the parking lot.
I wonder if part of that had to do with shows in general at that time seeming to do a lot of, for lack of a better word, issue episodes, very special episodes, as I like to call it sometimes. I don't feel like that's done as much, if at all, anymore on TV. But it just feels like there was a whole lot of that going on at that time as a way to maybe get publicity or get eyeballs or whatever.
Well, it certainly made for a good little blurb in TV Guide, right? Like, so I think that it was such, but I think, and Barney Miller was totally doing that. Taxi less so. I'm trying to think of other shows that were workplace comedies. Alice, I think less so, but I don't remember. I may have just not seen it. I may have just not noticed because I was, a child or a childlike young adult. All right. Anyway, so I think it's time to take a little break, and then we'll come back for 5 things to know about It's a Living. And we're back to our show after all that good, delightful conversation offline.
Maybe we'll do a whole episode with just our blathering.
Just the blather. That'll be extras. That's available to you on Patreon. No, seriously, if that's what you want, we'll give it to you.
That's right.
Go to patreon.com/80s TV Ladies. And then, no, we're really, really, really back now, Sharon. And, I got to tell you, It's a Living. So here we go. 5 things to know about It's a Living. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Melissa, are you ready?
Ready.
You can visit the Bonaventure Hotel to this day. It's still there at 404 South Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles. There is a restaurant and lounge at the top. The Bonavista Lounge is a revolving lounge with some pretty sweet views of downtown Los Angeles. But the restaurant, LA Prime, is actually down a level and does not revolve, I have learned. One of the pictures looks remarkably similar to the set for It's a Living, but I have not been to the restaurant. I would say 28 years ago, I went to the revolving part.
I did too. I took a tour with the LA Conservancy in downtown Los Angeles, a nighttime tour, and we ended at the lounge after the tour was over.
And I will say the architect of the Bonaventure also created the Peachtree Plaza Hotel, which is basically the Bonaventure, but stacked into one tower in Atlanta, Georgia. And it, too, has a revolving restaurant at the top of it. And it was most famously in the movie Sharky's Machine. They did one of the largest stunt falls out the window of like the 70th floor or something insane in the movie Sharky's Machine.
Was Tom Cruise involved in that? It sounds like something he would do.
No, he would do it now. It was a Burt Reynolds movie. It's remarkably, terribly sexist.
Really?
Yeah,
shocking.
I know. And a little bit kind of insane. Like you're like, wait, what is happening in this movie? But it was totally like that kind of movie that I guess still gets made somehow and ends up on streaming. But yeah, it was Tough Guy Cop in Atlanta. And he's making his own rules.
Well, for number 2 on our 5 things you need to know about It's a Living, Dick Clare and Jenna McMahon are credited with the creation of the show, but are only credited with one story by writing on episode 1, which is the pilot.
It's just a story by credit. So, I mean, I was curious because Paul Kreppel said he never saw them and they weren't around. And so they probably were it was just the machine that helped sell the show because they were so immensely well-known and popular, from Carol Burnett and Mama's Family and all the other things they invented and created. The show was produced by Whit Thomas Productions. Now, you've seen a Whit Thomas show if you've watched any kind of television whatsoever. It was Whit Thomas Productions was Paul Younger Whit and Tony Thomas. Tony Thomas being the son of actor Danny Thomas, who, by the way, played the Angel of Death on the very special episode. Whit Thomas is credited with producing over 23 television shows and another 14 shows as Whit Thomas Harris, with writer-creator Susan Harris, who, and we're talking about Soap, Benson, Empty Nest, Golden Girls being their biggest hit, I would imagine, but just a ton of shows to this day. I think Whit Thomas is The Office, as well as on The Office credit. So they're just a big production company who have been impactful in television since the 70s.
And as far as I know, they've done comedies. I don't remember them doing much, if any, drama, but I'm prepared to be wrong. The number 4 thing you need to know, Tom Whedon and Mark Sotkin wrote 27 episodes of the show and produced 93 of them. They would go on to be executive producers and head writers of The Golden Girls. And Tom Whedon is the father of Jed, Zach, and Joss Whedon, all who also work as writers and do other
directors and
and other things.
And producers and comic book
and showrunners.
Showrunners. Yes.
Yeah.
So very
That's where it all began, basically.
Well, except that I think Tom Whedon is the son of a screenwriter. So this is like 3 generation, at least, Hollywood. All right. Number 5. One of the reasons it may not have had huge success in its first 2 seasons is that its first season, it not only went up against the premiere season of the mega hit Magnum P.I., which also almost killed Cagney and Lacey, but it lost a major sponsor in its first season. Procter & Gamble apparently pulled out after the pilot because they thought the ladies' outfits were too revealing, and the storyline was that one of the waitresses, Dot, who was a virgin, was sort of trying to decide if she should go on vacation with her boyfriend because it meant she was probably going to have sex with him. And some of the ladies were like, yeah, you should do it. It's time.
I would imagine there wasn't a lot of that happening or discussion happening on television in the 1980s.
Well, it's an interesting discussion because they are all adult women.
Yes.
They, and it's handled, kind of interestingly, and it's an interesting subject for a pilot episode.
Of course.
I think it was the pilot episode. That was. Anyway, it was just sort of crazy. So that's our 5, except guess what, Sharon?
We have a bonus. Our bonus thing you need to know. Louise Lasser, Marion Mercer, and Richard Stahl would go on to guest star or have recurring roles on other Whit Thomas Harris shows, including The Golden Girls and Empty Nest. So they kept some of these actors in the family, as it were.
I think that was I think that was sweet. And they were really good actors.
Exactly.
It does help when that is true. And again, it feels like everybody got along because even though people came and left the show, the fact that the entire cast came back for season 3, practically was pretty amazing. And that they all seemed to be fairly friendly.
Yeah.
And think highly of the show and their time there.
It's audiography time.
So where can you find this show? It is available right now on Amazon Prime and for free on Freevee and on Roku channel. 4 seasons are available.
Tubi? Pluto?
Tubi. Thank you. I didn't think I'd had to write that down, but apparently I did. Or have Sharon remind me, so thank you. There is also a Facebook fan group that we'll drop a link to in our audiography part of our description. Thank you for listening to 80s TV Ladies. Our next episode, we will belly up to the fan bar and start a new mini-series of episodes looking at the fandoms of some of these beloved 80s shows.
We're throwing it back to a year ago to Scarecrow and Mrs. King. We will be bringing on fans of SMK, as the cool kids call it, starring Jeanette Valliere, who will be on to talk about so much cool Scarecrow and Mrs. King and the anniversary events she organizes annually.
This year's event will be October 13th to 14th in Los Angeles, and it will be celebrating the 40th anniversary of Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
Then we will be bringing back our favorite 90s TV babies to talk about It's a Living. If you want to join in and watch our It's a Living selections, check our description for what episodes we've assigned the 90s TV babies for this special 80s SmartCom.
I can't wait to hear what they think. Sharon, they always baffle and surprise and delight me.
That's the best part about our 90s TV babies. We never know what they're going to think.
I can't wait.
Coming up soon, our first Patreon-only exclusive episode of 80s TV Ladies.
We're going to break out of the 1980s and talk about a 60s toy that was a big 80s franchise and is now the billion-dollar highest-grossing film of the year. That's right. Get ready for a very special modern Barbie episode of 80s TV Ladies. We'll be joined by the 90s TV babies, so get ready.
And in other news on Scarecrow and Mrs. King, we heard a rumor about the upcoming famed Scarecrow and Mrs. King book written by David Johnson, no relation, and that it's on its way very soon.
Very soon.
Like this fall, maybe in time for the 40th anniversary of SMK.
I can't wait.
Stay tuned.
Be sure to check out patreon.com/80s TV Ladies and support this podcast if you're liking us.
If you're a big Scarecrow and Mrs. King fan, you may want to know about the 40th anniversary event held in Los Angeles this October. If you're interested, check out the Facebook page, Scarecrow and Mrs. King Anniversary.
Confirmed guests are Bruce Boxleitner, Martha Smith. The boys, Greg Morton and Paul Stout, played Jamie and Philip King, and a lot of special guest stars. It's pretty exciting.
It should be a great time.
I think some 80s TV Ladies podcast people are going to be there.
I think that's entirely possible. We'd like to take a moment to shout out some fans of our podcast that we've heard from. First of all, there's Devin, who's an SMK fan, Scarecrow and Mrs. King fan. We really appreciate your comments and the fact that, like us, you came to the podcast or came to the show because of Kate Jackson and Bruce Boxleitner, and so glad you're enjoying the show and that you're also a Remington Steele fan. So hopefully you enjoy those episodes as well.
Awesome. And another fan who contacted us through our website, 80stvladies.com, is Jeremy. And Jeremy heard about our podcast on the Derek and Romaine 2.0 show, which I'm so excited that we did that show. That was so much fun. You guys check it out, the Derek and Romaine 2.0 show. They have a podcast. They're super funny and smart, and it was delightful to be on their podcast. And they brought us Jeremy. Thanks for listening, Jeremy. We love to have you on board, and I'm glad you enjoyed the Tyne Daly and Sharon Glass episodes.
Next, we heard from Clementine, who went down kind of a streaming road that led her to finding or rewatching Scarecrow and Mrs. King. And after watching some episodes, she went looking for a podcast and, to our delight, found us. Thank you so much, Clementine. We're so glad you are enjoying the podcast and enjoying rewatching Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and hope you continue enjoying both.
And I'm so excited that Lena found us because she got to enjoy the Remington Steele and especially the Stephanie Zimbalist interview. Thanks for listening. And I want to shout out our YouTube fans and followers. Thank you for listening at YouTube. You can find us at youtube.com/80stvladies. Especially enjoying the comments from Mish Mass Ria 1246. That's my best attempt at your name, but I hear you're more of a 90s kid, but I'm really excited that you had some thoughts on maybe we should give more episodes to our 90s TV babies, and we did for It's a Living, because I think you might be right. So, but I really also enjoyed your comments about Remington Steele. Thanks for listening.
And also on YouTube, S. Tupper and Dee Dee Green had an interesting conversation, a back and forth about their thoughts about the relationship between Stephanie Zimbalist's Laura Holt and Pierce Brosnan's Remington Steele. We enjoy that our listeners are reaching out to each other. I think that's great.
I love that it's sparking conversation.
Yes. Just remember to be civil.
Yes, they were they again, I love deep discussion as long as it's respectful. And I think they were both incredibly respectful.
Indeed.
Shout out to Victor Malhow. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but just a lovely comment about Cagney and Lacey and Sharon Glass.
And then also from YouTube, Allison is a huge Kate Jackson fan, loved her in SMK. So glad you're listening. So glad you're enjoying the podcast. And of course, enjoying watching or perhaps rewatching Scarecrow.
We've covered too many shows.
No.
I was flipping them all around, Sharon.
I can't get my brain and my mouth to listen to each other. So anyway.
That's okay. People will love us anyway, you know. But what I liked is that Alice was like all of us would have loved a 5th season of Scarecrow Mrs. King, but we'll live on in our dreams. We'd like to salute some 80s TV ladies we've recently lost this year.
First, Nancy Frangione, who was an actress on Another World, All My Children, Matlock, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, and The Nanny.
And Shelley Smith, who did a lot of television in the 80s, including Heart to Heart, Magnum P.I., Fantasy Island, Love Boat, Hunter, and one of my favorites, 10 Speed and Brown Shoe.
Vicki Max Brenner was a gaffer for television and theatrical from Solid Gold all the way to RuPaul's Drag You.
Diane Beiderbach is a camera operator who started in the 70s on shows like Three's Company, Welcome Back, Kotter, and Fish. And in the 80s, started working on a lot of television and award shows, variety shows like Golden Globes and Country Music Awards. She was nominated for 17 technical Emmy Awards and won 3 for her camera work on shows like American Idol and Dancing with the Stars. Way to go, Diane.
Angus Swenson is best known for portraying the executive housekeeper Gretchen Krause on Benson for 159 episodes. She was nominated for 3 Emmys. She also has 2 Tony nominations.
Leela Goldoni is an actress who starred in The Italian Job, the original, and lots of 70s and 80s television, including guest appearances on Vegas and Cagney and Lacey.
Judith James was a television and film producer of Quiz Show, Mr. Holland's Opus, and American Playhouse.
Carlin Glynn is an incredible actress from the 80s and before, and also the mother of Mary Stuart Masterson.
Andrea Evans is an actress on 80 shows like Chips and is probably best known for the more than 700 episodes of Passions, The Bold and the Beautiful, and One Life to Live.
Glenda Jackson is a film and TV actress and 2-time Emmy winner.
We also have honorary 80s TV ladies, men, Stu Silver,
Tony Bennett, and of course Paul Rubens. We're sad. They will be remembered
and missed.
Hey, shout out to the People's Choice Podcast Awards. 80s TV Ladies has been nominated in 3 categories. Can you believe that?
No. Yes, no. It's. We started this a year ago. In no way, shape, or form did we ever do it to thinking that there might be some sort of nomination, let alone an award possibly in our future. We just loved it and wanted to have some fun.
I know. So it feels amazing. And the other podcasts that are nominated, we were nominated in Best Female Hosted, Arts, and TV and Film. We're so excited. It's such an honor. And the other people nominated are great. So check them out. There's a Facebook page for the Podcast Awards, the People's Choice Podcast Awards. And keep your fingers crossed for us. We're going to find out in September if we won.
And you hear this all the time from people who get nominated from various awards about how it's an honor to be nominated. And as a first-time nominee of anything, I can honestly say that is absolutely true. It boggles my mind that we are considered for awards against some of these amazing podcasts. It really is an honor. So thank you, Podcast Awards.
Yes.
We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
Thanks so much.